All right. And welcome back to another episode of Surviving the Side Hustle. Surprisingly, though, this isn't just any ordinary episode. This is a very special episode because this is the 100th episode of Surviving the Side Hustle. And I'm super excited for this because I have not yet brought back any repeat guests on the show. Every show, I highlight one guest and we dive into their story, some of their struggles, and their secrets to successful high performance. And today, my very first guest coming back was all the way from episode number 2, Mr. Mendez. So, John, I took a little bit of notes here.
Oh, sure. Nice.
So, Mr. Mendez, the first time we spoke on Surviving the Side Hustle was May 16th, 2023.
Wow.
Which is Brandon Gaydorus' birthday, I believe.
Wow.
And on that original conversation, you shared how powerful your transition from financial confusion to clarity. Which was sparked by reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and you were diving into the world of entrepreneurship and investment. Your journey included launching the Walk to Wealth podcast and a deep focus on financial literacy, personal development, time ownership, and the power of compounding small improvements. You opened up about loneliness and sacrifices involved in personal growth and the importance of setting a clear vision. Sound familiar?
Sounds pretty familiar. Yeah, around that time was an interesting time because this is back before I turned my side hustle into my main hustle. So that was an interesting time period. That was exactly, if I'm not mistaken, exactly 1 month before the big launch that I had that allowed me to quit my side hustle, my job, and go all in on my business. So yeah, sounds pretty familiar.
Yeah. And I'd love to kind of keep the structure of the show the same. So diving right in with the story, I'd love to ask you a little bit about how your entrepreneurial journey has grown and evolved since then.
Yeah. So for anyone listening, just a little bit of context. At that period in my life, May 16th, right? I was just coming out of focusing on real estate as an agent. I tried to start a social media agency. That didn't work out. Then I started talking about Ikigai and how to find your purpose. And then I taught my first ChatGPT class. Ended up making some money on that. And then launched my first course. Didn't go all that well. And then I was prepping for my first ever multi-day launch, which ended up going pretty well. And so that's just to bring everyone up to speed as to where I was in that point in my life. I was still working at Sign the Whale full time as a restaurant, doing about 30 hours and trying to survive the side hustle, right? And literally a month after that, I had a big launch. Ended up doing some numbers that I thought were pretty ridiculous to me. I did 20,000 in a day and ended up netting 33 for and some change.
33,000.
Yeah, for after that week. Took a while to get all the money because of payment plans, but all in all, ended up to 33.4. So that one day when I sold 20, that was a Monday. I think it was Juneteenth, if I'm not mistaken. And I forgot it was my launch was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday. And that last Monday was the day I was gonna pitch. Forgot to look in the calendar. And so that day is a holiday. So I had 100 to 110 people live days 1, 2, and 3. Day 4, I only had 60, 65 people live. So already I'm on a call and I'm just like, damn, this could go one of two ways. Either no, everyone's zoned out and getting ready to, for afternoon barbecues or time with family or party and whatever, or we can make some numbers. I had one person, I remember like it was yesterday. I had one person that morning, maybe around like 8-ish o'clock in the morning, buy. Now my class was at 12. So I had one person around 8 buy. It was a $997 offer. It's my first ever, like my big content creation course. So I'm like, all right, started off the day pretty solid. I get on the call, there's like 65 people, a little bit of doubt creeps in. I'm like, all right, this whole challenge is amazing. Now again, going from 100 people to 60 people, that's like a 40% drop right there. Almost half the people that were in attendance didn't show up that final day. And I ended up doing my pitch. That was the first time I ever like really like hardcore sold something in a live presentation. And ended up closing again. 19 people bought on that spot. So a little just under 20. on that presentation live. So at 1 o'clock, when I logged off the Zoom call, I checked my Kajabi account and boom, 20,000 coming pending to my bank account. And so I ended up running some errands that day, and I ended up going to the mall for whatever reason. Um, there's a story behind everything. I ended up going to the mall. While I was running errands, the whole time in my mind, I'm thinking about like, yo, this might be the opportunity to actually leave. I've been wanting to leave Sign the Whale for so long up to that point. Not because I hated the job, but because like each day I stayed was another reminder to my ego that your business hasn't taken off yet. And so the longer I stayed, the more reminders I got in that, hey, your business sucks, right? And that's how I seen it for myself. And once I was in the mall, I was like, you know what? F it. You know, I'm gonna drive over. And the whole drive, it was the most bittersweet experience of my life because it's like the moment I've been building up to for so long, and yet I was actually about to quit the only sense of somewhat stability that I had. And I've never been an entrepreneur prior to entrepreneurship. Like, so for me, it was like, yeah, I wanted this. This is what I prayed for. This is what I've been asking about. And now that the opportunity is here, like, do I take it? And I remember driving. I never quit a job before. I got fired once. Sorry for another day. I got fired from my dishwashing job because I overslept. Yeah, but I never quit a job before. And so I'm just like, yo, what the hell am I gonna say? Like, wait, how am I gonna bring this up in conversation? And so I ended up talking to my manager, and like, they kind of had the gist. Like, I would bring my laptop to work at times, and I would like, they knew that I had some business stuff cooking up. It was a matter of time. Just no one knew when that time was going to come. And that day finally came. And so when I brought it up to my manager, he was like, we kind of figured it would happen sooner or later. And so I ended up, deciding to put my 2 weeks in. And he hadn't made the schedule yet for the following week. So I still was on the schedule for that same week, that Friday. And then he was like, I'll just not add you to the schedule for next week. And that Friday was the last week I worked at the restaurant. And aside from one day, because there was an emergency, they just needed some help and I was free. Aside from that, I never went back. It's been now a little over 2 years since then.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's pretty much the same time frame as the show here. And I'm curious to hear kind of like where you're at now, because I know you've got a big thing coming up.
Yeah.
At time of this hitting is going to be a little bit past that, but you share a little bit on how your entrepreneurial path has kind of changed since that first day.
Yeah. Going all in. Yeah. So after that launch, again, that was still my biggest launch to date. I got too excited. So originally I wanted to start a social media agency, and that didn't work out. I decided, I realized I hated creating content for other people. God bless those that do, but I couldn't do it, man. It's tough work. Brett knows that. It's tough work managing other people's channel on top of still managing your own presence. And I still had my podcast. And this time around, now I'm a big entrepreneur. I got it figured out. I had the 20K launch. I'm like, I'm going to do an agency again, but this time I'm going to hire out. So there was one lady who worked with a big team actually in this office that we're in right now. And the team disbanded. She started doing her own social media work. She's more of an operator. Like, she like behind the camera, behind the computer, working, right? I like to be the face. I like to be in front of people. I like to speak. I like to present. I like to be on stage. And so I was like, you know what? We could have this thing where like you do the fulfillment, I do the acquisition, and right, and all I have to do is just get clients. I know a bunch of agents that need help with social media. Long story short, she ended up getting a full-time position with benefits at some city job. I don't have any benefits or 401ks to offer, so I can't blame her at all. But all that momentum from that one launch went right down the road, right down the drain. Because instead of focusing on selling more courses and getting more people, I tried to get back into that social media agency. So then I was kind of like trying to pick the pieces back up. Had a launch in January 2024, and that one didn't do as well. And that was the first time I think I experienced like depression. I'm normally a pretty optimistic guy, pretty positive guy, and that was the first time I tried to do 100K in a day. That launch in total did 17.5, which isn't awful, but 9 of which was from VIP upsells. And the day that I actually pitched, no one bought for the first 3 days. So it was just crickets. And so I'm at that point in time, I was a spreadsheet millionaire. I get this many people to opt in, this many people show, If this many people show, this many people convert at this price point, we got 100K. Everything was great. And then crickets. So like at that point in my life, I was just like, man, I don't want to get a job, but I don't want to be a business owner. Like for the first time, I genuinely was like, yo, bro, this actually sucks. And I remember just not wanting to do anything for like 2 days, not wanting to get out of bed, not wanting to talk to anybody. Like I wanted to do anything but entrepreneurship at that point in time. And then 2024 is when everything kind of just went downhill. Smiled through it all, had a lot of great experiences, a TEDx talk, a marathon, a TV show, a competition. Did a lot of ups, but like 2024 killed me inside. Like that was a rough year trying to get past. Survived the side hustle, right?
Yeah.
Survived. And it's not that I didn't make money that year, just that all the bad decisions leading up to it, because I had savings, I didn't feel until I didn't have anything left. And then once I didn't have anything left, everything went downhill. Credit shot, got in debt, cars started getting maxed out. And that just kind of carried over into this year. And so for a long time, I feel like I just kind of been playing with my back against the wall and just trying to just like, I just got to dodge one more punch. I just got to stay in the ring a little bit longer, right? And just keep fighting a little bit longer. But it's not the same me that got into entrepreneurship when I first dropped out of college. Like that version of John, like I was optimistic is an understatement. Like you couldn't tell me I couldn't do anything. I had anything I set my mind to, I was naively optimistic. I didn't know what problems came with entrepreneurship. I was just like a big puppy who saw a bone. I'm like, yo, we're going all in. And now this year, it's been interesting because this year started out pretty good. And it's been going pretty well. Been digging myself out of debt, building my credit back up, which kind of sucks. I'm supposed to be Mr. Mendez, the points and miles guy, and I'm over here freaking not living by, good credit standards, which kind of sucks. It just hurts a lot of just shots to your ego you kind of take behind closed door. But smiling through it all. And this year, again, starting to get back on the right track. Q1 was pretty solid this year. Started to really sit down and focus a little bit more. Around March, I started around the period of Lent, I started to tap back in with God, started watching sermons. I've been going to church for a while, but I feel like I was a once a week Christian for a long time. And I started tapping back into the word and kind of fell off the horse a little bit. That's story for another day. But at that point in time in March, I heard what I needed to hear. And it was like a sermon talking about like lean not on your own understanding. And this pastor, he was talking about like, oh, leaning on your own understanding is what got you into that bad relationship, what got you into that job you hate, what got you into that situation you shouldn't have been in, what got you into your finances being in shambles. And that finances part, I was like, damn, I've been leaning on my own understanding for quite some time now. And it makes sense as to why nothing is going my way, at least the way I originally drew it up. And like that kind of reignited the flame. I feel like I've been if you're familiar with Fairly Odd Parents, like the Pixies are super corporate. And I feel like my life has just kind of been grayed out for a little bit. And like back in March this year was like that moment where like I feel like I found that fire, and then got back on the horse, started fighting again, and then I was like, you know what? Let me do this 100K a day challenge. Started off hot. I thought I was gonna give it again, playing Spreadsheet Millionaire, and now I'm at a stage where like, all right, I got a week and a half left coming up to this challenge. Numbers aren't looking anywhere like I drew it up leading up to it, and I was like, man, I could abandon ship and hope that no one notices, or B, follow through and scrape out what I can from what's there. And it's not like, again, I have 150 opt-ins right now, which is not awful. It's just not where I need it to be to make this 100K thing a reality. And so like part of me is just like, damn, well, I'll just see how it goes, and I don't want to let doubt like take over. But it's also like, I done played Spreadsheet Millionaire before, and disappointment comes from unmet expectations. So I don't want to end up like I did last time. So we'll see how it all plays out. I was talking to you on the phone about like, where I want to take everything. Like it feels like it's been an uphill battle trying to convince people of using AI. Like it's self-explanatory. It's probably the best productivity tool that ever lived. And yet it feels like I'm constantly having to, especially my target audience, real estate agents, which is a more traditional, very slow, averse to change industry as a whole. Not everyone, but as a whole. And it's like, man, like, I feel like I'm constantly convincing people. So I don't know if it's like, maybe I'm not attracting the right audience. That's maybe a thing. Cause like, it's back to like water bottle, right? A water bottle in a store is $1. maybe $1.50. Same water bottle at Yankee Stadiums, $4. Same water bottle at the airports, like 6 or 7. So maybe I'm not in the right environment, right? Maybe this AI business isn't what I thought it could be. Maybe there's a little bit of that. Maybe it's time to pivot like I've done in the past. And pivoting is what allowed me to get to the next level. So there could be that. Then I heard a podcast where it's like, well, most entrepreneurs, they abandon ship when it gets tough instead of figuring out the problem and getting to that next level. So it could also be that. And so there's a lot of thoughts that just in the past week are currently running through my mind as about the time we're recording this. I'm trying to figure out like, you know, I'm not the same happy entrepreneur when I first started doing this. And so maybe it's because I'm in a season of like hardship, or maybe it's because like it might be time to pivot, just like when I tried real estate and pivoted from that, and then I tried the agency and pivoted to that. All those pivots led to the next thing, which ended up being better than the last. So I don't know, just weighing a lot of thoughts right now, and trying to figure out what's the next step right now. Just trying to hit that 100K a day, see where that goes, and that's kind of like
Sweet.
what's on my mind right now.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you and thank you for being vulnerable and sharing everything with you, because entrepreneurship certainly does have a lot of ups and downs. And from what I'm hearing from you, and I mean, you know me, I'm always talking about resiliency and how it's important to kind of weather the storm for the lows, but also for the highs too. And it's important because you seem to have a pretty level head through and through, even with like the ups and the downs. So I admire you with that. And just real quick, last thing I want to ask you is, what would be your advice for some of those entrepreneurs who are maybe struggling with keeping a level head through it, and maybe they are in a situation where it seems like hardship after hardship after hardship, and they just can't catch a break, and they're like on the fence thinking about like, man, maybe this isn't the right option for me?
Yeah, I'll give two answers to those of you listening that have a more harsh or critical self dialogue. My advice I'll leave you with is a quote. I heard this a couple weeks ago from actually my first one-on-one coaching client. Super dope lady, realtor out of Jersey. Love her. She posted something that said, "Pressure is a privilege because it means something's expected of you." And that hit me like a train. And so if you are one of those people who have a harsher, again, self-dialogue, those of you who probably played sports growing up or in a competitive household, like I talk to myself in a more harsh tone than I would normally talk to others. That's something I would probably sit, that resonated with me. And like stuff like that, it's like, this is what I signed up for. And it's kind of a reminder for those who have a softer internal dialogue. It's not to say that one's right or one's wrong, just how we amp ourselves up. Find good people to be around. Yeah, this entrepreneurship is already extremely lonely. Most people have surface level relationships in their personal lives and in their business lives, because no one ever wants to, be the person that shows that, hey, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, right? No one ever wants to show like, how's it going? Well, going great, living the dream. Are you actually?
Yeah, thriving, right?
Thriving. Are you actually, or is that just abundant minded mumbo jumbo? Like, how's that? It's okay to call it what it is. Sometimes life sucks, right? And yet you get through it. And that's not to have like you have a negative outlook. You're just calling a spade sometimes. So for anyone that again doesn't want the harsh, David Goggins like quotes or motivation or whatever, just find good people. Find good people that know how to turn it off. Some people that you can hang out with, like you, like Brandon. Me and Brandon were just out last weekend, freaking had a conversation for like an hour after we went out, and he was eating a sandwich. We were just sitting on a cold bench talking for like an hour about nothing that had to do anything with business, right? So finding people like that who, one, are successful, but B, know how to turn it off. I think that's a lost skill. Everyone is just business all the time. It's like sometimes you just got to get away from it, escape a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. Thank you. Always a pleasure hanging with you, Mr. Mendez. Where do people follow you and stay up to date with what you're doing?
Yeah, so thank you as always for having me on. Honored, and like, man, to see that this podcast went from, I still remember when you were thinking about launching it, to where it's come to now is dope to see. And I'm honored to be the first, returning guest. But with that being said, I teach AI, and I always say that AI won't replace you. Someone using AI will. Now, you could spend the years that I did trying to learn AI for yourself, or you can just go to stopandstare.media/AI AI and get my free AI starter kit. And it has the best prompts I created over the past 3 years for like content creation, video scripts, newsletters, blogs, prompts to create other prompts for other stuff you want to work on. Everything you need to really just like get the leverage you're looking uh, for free. Just stop us here. .media/AI.
All right. I appreciate it, Mr. Mendez. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Facey.
All right. Thank you again, Mr. Mendez. And now our next guest up on the 100th episode of Surviving the Side Hustle is Brandon Gaydorus. And the first time you were on the show was actually May 3rd, 2023. That was episode number 3. And on that episode, you discussed how you transformed your passion from golf fitness into a career with a vision to establish 10,000 student universities across major cities. You also discussed how you had a 3-year exit strategy from your previous venture, which was that golf and fitness world, and how building skills for business success and your speaker school series aimed at developing communication for both business and personal development. You were also offering loads of inspiration and practical advice for side hustlers. So I want to bring you back on today because you're one of my best friends and you're a huge inspiration and also a awesome resource to learn from and to grow from. And back on that first episode we did, we got a lot from you, and I'm curious to see how your mission with the speaker school, because that's kind of growing and such. And I'm interested to see how the mission has expanded and how you continue to shift and grow as new levels kind of come on.
So when I was younger, I used to like just going to random waterfalls. I would just, yeah, I would, yeah, I know it sounds random, but like I just wanted to see stuff outside of my house. And so I would look for waterfalls. That was like the thing that I was like, oh, like I'll go to a waterfall and it's cool. Like you just see the water drop in. And I would go there, and at the top of the waterfall, what was there? It was the water that was falling. It was that mountain. And so I always thought about like the top of the mountain or like the getting to the top. And I was like, man, that's just so cool. And like I went to Niagara Falls when I was younger and I saw that. I saw like the best falls there was. And I was like, man, that's so cool to be at the top. And then eventually when I felt like I climbed to the top of the industry I was in, which was golf fitness training, it felt so lonely. And it felt like when I was a kid, when I would go there by myself just to explore, discover. And my first career was something that I explored. I discovered, and I discovered how to get there. I discovered how to get to the top of the mountain, the top of the waterfall. And it wasn't what I felt like I wanted it to feel. And so I said, you know what? What I want it to feel like is like my college parties that I hosted. So me and my 3 college roommates, we had the best parties in school. And like people would come in, they would give you hugs, they would dap you up, they would get so excited to spend time with you. And in that 3-hour time frame, you had the time of your life. And so I said, in relation to business, in relation to my curiosity towards waterfalls and climbing the mountain, I said, you know what? Let me see if I can do this with a bucket list business. And that was the vision in the beginning, was just, I want to climb that mountain together, because golf fitness I was pursuing since I was 17. When I was 26, I got voted top 50 in America. And I knew it was going to take probably 9 to 12 years to climb to a top of another mountain. So I said, it's going to take a lot of time. I'm going to make it a lot of fun. And I'm so grateful because you have been there since the very beginning. So I met Rob about a month before I decided to go on to business on my own. This was my previous business. And I saw him at a conference again about a month later. And we talked a while that day.
At lunch.
At lunch. That next day, I decided to make a commitment to start my business in the fitness world. And ever since then, I've never relied on another employer to pay me. And it's so cool that he was there at the beginning of that business And then he was actually my first client for Warm Heart Life. I was trying to figure out how to make money, and Grant Cardone would say, okay, the first thing you got to do is just get revenue in. So I said, all right, how can I make money? And and I said, hey, Rob, I'm thinking about this thing where I charge $1 and you can ask me a question. And he's like, yeah, man, I'll do that. So, like, you know, people see the speaker schools now and they say, oh, like, you're going to Austin, Texas this month to go teach. You're going to Laguna Beach, California next month to go teach. It's like you did the A to B con where you sold over 200 tickets 3 years in a row. Like, they see that, but what they don't see was guys like Rob who believed in me in the very beginning. So I believe when you're starting a side hustle, one of the most important things you need is you need like-minded people who can help push you through those roadblocks, because you may think you have a clear vision, but you're going to see stuff that you couldn't see before when you attack that vision. And when you have good people, they help allow you to see things that you couldn't see before.
I love that. And yeah, those earlier days were some fun days, a lot of different adventures and such. And I hear you talking about mountains and climbing to different peaks with everybody, with different people for different things. And I remember back in the early days with those, trying to figure out like, okay, how do we make a little bit of money? What do we sell? We were like, remember, like, we did random little odd job type things, like little programs. I'm curious to ask, so back then the challenges were like figuring out how to make money. Now that you're more established and you're kind of growing and scaling and building things up, what are some of the challenges that you see now in the stages that you're currently at?
Well, so I feel like you got 3 phases of business. You got the marketing, then you got the sales, then you got the fulfillment. Ain't nothing more important than the marketing, because if people don't know you, they can't flow you. And then once people know you, if you can't convert, then you're not going to get any revenue. And then if you got leads, if people are converting and you're not fulfilling, what are you going to get? A lot of negative reviews, customers that don't return. I heard this stat that, like, it's 85% easier to get business through someone who is already paid than to acquire a new customer. So if you're not fulfilling, it's hard to be able to continue to get more business. But nothing is more important than the marketing. So as I was looking back at the end of last year, I was like, well, what do I got to do? I said, I got to dial in on a marketing process. So for me, I I started studying Alex Hermosi. I was like, what is he saying to do based on where I'm at with my business? And he said, the rule of 100. He said, between touches and social media content, hit 100 a day. And I'm like, damn, I was shooting for 10 a day. So I was like, I got a long way to go. So I said, you know what? I'm going to shoot for 40 touches a day and 60 minutes of content creation a day. And these guys meet with me every week. We have this mini mastermind. We meet on Monday nights and we report our numbers for the week. And Monday through Friday, I haven't missed one day of getting the 40 touches. And I think out of like 100, I've only missed probably 7 or 8 days of the 60 minutes of content creation. So that's one thing that I've been focusing on, is dialing in that marketing. And then now recently, I'm like, okay, now that the marketing is really starting to be more dialed in, it's an ongoing process. It never stops. I said, let me start to tailor in some sales work again, you know, and I did a ton of sales training in the past for years, but I was like, I'm slacking a little bit. I'm missing out on some sales. I got to start dialing that in again. So now I'm writing down objections. I'm writing down the amount of sales calls I have every week, writing amount the amount of book calls, conversions, the amount of virtual coffees. So I'm keeping track of all that stuff now, because I'm like, man, if I'm going to hire people to do this, I need to make sure I tell them exactly what to do and how to do it. So that's a big challenge for me right now, is dialing in all the processes so that I can scale. If you would have told me the revenue that I've hit the last 7 months, the average of that, I would have said for sure I'm ready to hire 2 people, until I actually hit it and I realized there was a lot more gaps that I needed to fulfill. So, yeah, kind of like what John was talking about, like it's cool when you throw out all these cool numbers and all these cool things, but like no matter what level of business you're like my mentor, he's probably worth 100 to 500 million. I've never asked, but I've tried to figure out the math of that. Probably around there. I get to talk to him 3 days a week. He faces very similar challenges that I face. No matter what level of business you're in, you're always trying to figure out where are the gaps, what can we do to fill those gaps, and then how can we move forward. And so that's some of the things I'm facing now.
Nice. Thank you for sharing all that stuff, because I know a lot of people at different stages, so they're going to connect with that and resonate with all that information. And going to kind of segue into the final question I have for you. Along your journey, you've definitely developed and cultivated a bunch of different skills, between being able to communicate better, and learning better, like honing in on how to learn better and how to network and connect. Out of those things, where do you find is like the most beneficial skill that you've learned or brought on? Is it confidence? Is it something like just communicating, or what's your take on it?
I think that's a great question. And the question I have, can I ask you all a question? All right. Yeah, that one. Hey, that'd be a pretty good paid speaking gig. Sure, I'll take the $30. All right. So, would you rather have a billion friends or $1 billion? What would you say, Jenny? A billion friends, $1 billion. Yeah. There's there's no right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong answer. But think about what you would say. What's that? Okay. So, some of you are probably going to say money, some of you are going to say friends. I thought when I heard that question, I'll take the money. I'll invest it. I'll put it in the right places. And then when I heard the guy talking about it, he's like, y'all are not thinking the right way. He's like, if you've got 1 billion friends and you ask them for $10, then immediately you have $10 billion. And of course, the Debbie Downers are going to be like, oh, well, you can't have 1 billion friends, or like, what if they don't give you $1? It's like, okay, well, even if even if 2 out of 10 people give you $1, then you have 2 billion right there. So it's just like, oh, if I can have the friends, then I can have the resources. If I can have the resources, I can get the answers. So I would rather have the friends, because then I can get the resources. Listen, I'm not a great cook, but there's a phenomenal cook right back there that could teach me how to make anything if I asked him.
Chef
Right?
Ben. He was a guest on the podcast as well.
There you go. So I am nowhere near as good at having a third hand as having Jeffrey Seitz there help me out before A to BCon. Like, as much as I wish I could have a third hand to do everything that needs to do to host a conference, is not possible. Jeffrey, he says, hey, I'm getting there early. Do you need help? I said, you know what? Sure, I would love some help. And he comes to my place. He said, Brandon, you were going to move all of this by yourself? I said, Jeffrey, I just haven't thought this far until now. And so we stuffed his car full of stuff. And then there was still a ton of stuff at my place. So there was a push cart in my apartment building. So we stacked the push cart, and there was no room to sit in Jeffrey's car because we stuffed the front seat. I literally just pushed the push cart down to UConn Stanford. And me and Jeffrey, we got everything loaded into the storage room the day before, and it was the least stressed I had been at the conference for the last 5 years, because we did everything the day before. So you could say, oh, like, you could have all the money in the world, but like, I would rather have the resources, because the resources always give me the answers, right? So I'm trying to learn Spanish. So what first thing Jenny says when she sees me, she said, how's the Spanish going? I said, it's not going that great. She said, oh, I should talk to you in Spanish. I said, yes, you should. Luz is like, at speaker school, she brought that question up to me probably like 4 or 5 times. And so those things kind of pushed me to be like, okay, you know, maybe I do need to like go to Puerto Rico for a couple days and get involved in the culture, Colombia, wherever it may be. Yeah, it's like ain't no money gonna teach me Spanish, but good friends can help me get involved in the culture and make that happen. So
Only had a friend who had Duolingo family plan.
yeah, exactly. So I got to give a shout out to Rob. I'm in his Duolingo family plan. Yeah,
I'm also not doing well with my Spanish practice.
I
3 years in a row. I got 500 days in a row, and then I pretty much just tanked it.
there's someone in our family plan that I have like 100-day streak with that I have no idea who it is.
I think it's probably Rick. It's one of my clients.
There you go. There you go.
Well, Brandon, as always, thank you. It's inspiration, education, and you just bring some laughter and some great vibes, man. Good times, good vibes.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure. What do you got?
What was the inspiration towards starting Surviving the Side Hustle? Because I see so many people new into entrepreneurship that just are craving a community and resources that you've provided.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much it, right? To create a community of other people with side hustles, early stage entrepreneurship, solopreneurs, where they can kind of go, they can learn, they can relate to others so they can realize that they're not the only ones going through the struggles. They can learn from others, and then they can get inspired and to continue to drive and get through it. And connecting is a great tool for me to be able to connect with people, meet awesome individuals, and then also helping them with their businesses out as well. So creating some content, putting it out on blast, helping my audience cross-pollinate with them and help them get a bigger reach. So really helping me, serving others, connecting with more, and then also learning myself too. I'm picking up things when I'm having all these conversations, and it's just made sense that it was a win-win-win-win all around.
All right.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you, Brandon.
Who's dead? That's what I really look like.
Yeah, there you go. There you are. And again, thank you, Brandon Gaydorus. Always a pleasure having you up here. And now the final guest that we're going to bring up onto the 100th episode of Surviving the Side Hustle is Mr. Jeffrey Seitz. So, Jeffrey, I was looking back at the archives and I realized that you were on episode number 11, which was June 21st, we recorded, 2023. So it was almost 2 years ago, which is pretty wild. On that conversation, though, you brought out your love for fantasy literature and wrestling to the show. We were discussing your lifelong writing journey and the difference between being a writer and becoming an author, and the significance of mentorship and community. At the time of that first episode, you were working on the fantasy novel that you had started when you were back at like 18, I believe. And you were sharing your insights on world building and managing multiple creative projects. And in that conversation, we also explored how professional wrestling became a tool for you as networking and personal growth. So today, coming back on, I'd love to ask you, where are you at now with your novel and other creative projects? And any major milestones or pivots happened in your life since 2023?
So much has changed. I don't even know where to begin. I would say when we were recording that on Conversation, I would say not necessarily I was like soul searching. I was trying to put myself out there in the world. I just didn't know how. And in that journey, it was also a journey of you dragging me out of my comfort zone. You know, I was like kind of kicking and screaming, in a matter of speaking. And I looking back, I didn't realize that, you know, you were showing me the tough love that I needed to get myself out of that comfort zone and just get out there into the unknown, because that's where the real action happens, because nothing really happens when you're in the comfort zone. That's where you just wither and die, essentially. And I learned that lesson the hard way. I know that sounds a little morbid, but in terms of milestone, I've learned to not be afraid, because during that time I was going through some personal struggles with my family, and I asked myself, I can either become a victim or I can become a victor in this situation. And at the time, I was afraid to share that story. And as I was going through the next draft, I was having a conversation with a author who I met through social media. And one night I was talking to him, I was like ranting and raving, telling him, I've been working on this damn book for so freaking long. It's not going the way that I want. It's just not going the direction I was hoping it would go in. Here I am with a bachelor's and master's in English, and I can't write good for lickety split, and it's just not going the way that I want. Like, what I'm not doing right. So I'm ranting and raving, and then he asked me the simple question: who are you doing this for? And in that moment, I got so emotional because I forgot who I was doing this for. I forgot that I'm writing this story for my family, who's still currently broken, and I'm hoping and praying through the grace of God that I can use this brokenness to not only mend my family, but use this story to reach out to other people who might be in my situation. Because our main character in this novel does have a broken family and a brother who's estranged. I'm writing this as almost my tribute to all these writers who have influenced me as a child, the ones who inspire me to read, who open portals to different worlds. It was through people like C.S. Lewis that I was able to go through the wardrobe and find comfort. It was through J.R.R. Tolkien that I was able to come to Middle Earth and go beyond Middle Earth. It was through people like Manuel Engel that I was able to learn science. So this is also like my tribute to everything that I love. And ultimately, what keeps me going is I'm writing this for the world, because as someone once said, there is no greater agony than bearing a soul untold. And that's what keeps me going. I've learned so much more about myself as a person, as well as the writing process, because the biggest lesson I had to learn is that there is no perfect moment. You just got to do it. And I learned that lesson the hard way, because I was so terrified of the unknown. So ever since then, I've learned to brace the process, just get it out there, fall in love with this character that I see so much myself in, and just be true to my word. And I'm just looking forward to see where this one takes me.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And I know where you're kind of at with it. You're closing in on the next edit. You've got things kind of lined up. I'm reflecting back on the first conversation we had. Totally changed career at a new position, closed the previous one. You're involved in so many different social circles and communities and things. And I'm interested to ask you, what are some of the new struggles or challenges that you're seeing with everyday life, with it's between your writing, social, just everyday life? Like, where are you at? Because it seems like feel like you're just crushing, knocking things down. And what are these new challenges that are popping up for you?
I would say the biggest challenge right now is getting distracted. I'm going to be taking some time off in June because my deadline for the next draft is June 30th. And in 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be taking some days off where I'm just going to put everything on pause. I'm even willing to turn my phone off and just give it to my parents. I'm willing to drive all the way from Poughkeepsie to Highland and say, just keep this phone, because I just want to go all in, man, because I just want to devote as much time as possible to get this done, because it's been in my mind for too long, and I'm doing a disservice to so many of my friends and family and to the world, essentially. And also, I would say another struggle is balancing all of my side hustles. I work at a university. I also work at a restaurant. I play the piano for a couple of churches in my area. Going into my 5th season working at the New York State Renaissance Fair, which is something that I enjoy, but it's a matter of like balancing, learning to say no, because I recently closed a chapter with my not-for-profit job thinking, oh, well, during the winter break, this is the opportunity for me to make more money. Things are tight, but And I was listening to a podcast, and I forget who it was that said this, but now I'm just going to be paraphrasing. You don't want to make yourself available. You want to make yourself valuable. And that was what I needed to finally closing the door for that not-for-profit job that I worked at for 15 years. Eternally grateful. I've learned some of my biggest lessons, and I'm convinced as great times were, as painful as times were, it taught me a lot, and I believe it was preparing me for the next season, working for a university. Sure, things are slow right now, but it's the first time that I feel like I'm actually on a team, because for the longest time I had convinced, I was believing this crazy ass lie that I had to be working in the book publishing industry in order to validate myself as a writer. But that doesn't mean anything if you don't have anything published. And I convinced myself, thinking that no one else understood me. If this person that didn't meet my agenda, they can't help me. But it just shows what happens when you just get so lost in your mind, when you become so ensnared by the lies of the devil that you just think of this crazy stuff. And I've realized that you can be a writer, an artist, no matter what you do. Sure, it's something I want to be doing full time, but I would say the biggest struggle is just maintaining that promise and doing what it takes. And I would say another struggle I'm currently facing is just being true to myself, because this year I just made progress in my personal development, and I had to call myself in certain areas in my life. And ever since then, it's been a game changer. It's just a matter of being true to myself, not slipping back, and just keep going on this new path, and just seeing how I can contribute to others. Because when I first started networking, coming to events in Connecticut or like ACE, for example, my thinking was, what can these people do for me, instead of me thinking, what can I do for these people? I still don't know, but because I let go of my ego, and because I let go of this fantasy I was ensnared in, that's more possible. I'm still figuring it out, but the willingness to be more of a servant has given me more opportunity, has enabled me for that creative space to think, how can I help this person? What is it going to take for me to, sure, most of the time, I have a long drive, but it's people like Brandon, for example, that I was willing to make that commute because I wanted to serve him, because A to B Con has meant so much to me. It's where events like that, where I've learned so much more about myself, and where I've met incredible people like yourself.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I appreciate you coming to a lot of my events and everybody else's events. And it's inspiring to see the progress that you're continuing to make. And looking back and reflecting on the long journey that you've had it's crazy and cool to see the different branches that you're connecting with and everything there. And I know you've got a lot of projects that you're working on, and I've got to ask you for final question here. What would you tell like a aspiring author, someone who's looking at like, oh, I want to write this book, but it's just so daunting, and maybe not even just a writer, maybe just anybody who has this audacious goal where they're trying to do something, but it's so intimidating. What do you tell them to help them get through it?
I don't want to say just do it, but I'm just going to draw this. I'm just going to draw that out a little bit, so bear with me. Like I mentioned, this book that I'm currently working on, the current working title is A Dragon from Heaven. It's something that I just thought of when I was 18, and over time, through life experience, I've learned to give it substance from my own life. As I mentioned, the situation with my family, I've learned to ask myself, am I going to become a victim, or am I going to become a victor? And you got to get honest with yourself. And as I started to read more, and I would say going back a little bit to the book that really sparked my interest and love for this journey of reading and literature was the book A Wrinkle in Time by Manuel Engel. Highly recommend it. And I was thinking, what was the scene that gravitated me to this story? What was it? Because I was introduced to this book by an audio recording, and there was a scene where the main characters are talking. They're on their mission to find Meg Murray's the protagonist, her father, who's been missing for years, and their journey takes them practically across the universe. And they're at this one planet, and from the perspective of others outside of Earth, Earth is shadowed, and they're talking about who has helped overcome the darkness, who has helped become Earth unshadowed. And one of the characters asks the children, think of the people, the great people that's come before you. And one of the characters said, oh, I know, Jesus. And it was that moment when I was 11 or 12 years old, I thought, this person knows Jesus too? And I know it sounds weird, but it really resonated with me because, I was homeschooled all the way through 12th grade, and during lunchtime, we listened to audiobooks. And in that moment, the more that I think about it, was that there were people outside of my house, outside of the Hudson Valley region, that did share my beliefs. And I would say the biggest thing that has helped me and sustained me as a person, as a writer, is my faith in God. Because just going off of John's point, I used to be a Sunday only person, treating this as a chore rather than treating my faith in God as a relationship. And just to bring this to a close, for the longest time, I knew that the Chronicles of Narnia was very faith-based. C.S. Lewis, he made it obvious in the Chronicles of Narnia and also in his other writings, Mere Christianity, the Screw Tape Letters. And I love the Lord of the Rings. And for the longest time, I tried to convince myself that the Lord of the Rings, they're not a Christian story. I knew that Tolkien was a devout Catholic, and it's a political book. It's a political book. There's no way in heck that this is a Christian story. Who's God? Is it Gandalf? Is Jesus Aragorn? Like, what's the One Ring? And it wasn't until that I started studying his essay on fairy stories, where Tolkien really laid out the groundwork, his matrix of what makes a successful fantasy story. He talks about how the Bible, the whole resurrection story, is the highest form of a fairy story. That story that has a happy ending. And it just took me years to realize that, what I would say to someone who, whether they're a believer or not, what's a story that just keeps you going? What's the story that gives you hope? And what can you expand upon? Because, in this day and age, with all the content that's being created, whether it be movies or books or TV shows, we all gravitate from certain sources of inspiration. And the way that I see it is, this story is my tribute to everything that I love. Fantasy and professional wrestling, it's my tribute. It's a way that I feel that I can express myself to the world, because I believe this is a story that is just too great within my soul to keep hidden. So what I would say to someone is that there's no perfect moment. The first draft is going to suck, but there is a huge difference between keeping it in your head than putting it on the paper, because not only you're manifesting it, you're bringing it to life. And that's why there's multiple drafts, and even if you get it written down, you might get rejected if you go the traditional route. My favorite book, A Wrinkle in Time, got rejected 40 times, to the point where one reader reading the manuscript said, I think this is the worst story I've ever read in my entire life. It reminds me of The Wizard of Oz. And Harry Potter was rejected multiple times because back then, people didn't know what to make of it. you know, and I have to be okay with the fact that if I choose to go the traditional route, it might be rejected. And I have to be okay with that, you know? And so I would ultimately say to someone, regardless of their belief or their faith, just do it. Get out of your comfort zone, get in the wilderness. It's going to be scary, but it's going to be so freaking worth it.
Wow. Thank you. Where do people go to kind of follow you, check in, what's the update with the book? How do they get in touch with you?
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram, J Sites with a Z, I believe. I got to get used to saying my Instagram name, J Sites with a Z. As I mentioned, I'm working on the next draft. My deadline is June 30th, and once I meet that deadline, I'm going to take a 1-2 week break off, you know, kind of rest, because I do have other projects I'm working on. I started working on a short story for a class. I also was working on a professional essay that talks about pro wrestling and storytelling. So after that, my break, I'm just going to devote the rest of the year just fine tuning it, because I realized the more that I'm becoming honest with myself, the more progress that I'm making. So that's my plan. And I'm just excited for this opportunity to see where it takes me. You know, this conversation that we're having right now is giving me either further momentum to be a man of my word and just keep going. And I appreciate you too.
Love it. And I want to thank everybody here in the audience. This is a live recording in case you haven't learned that while you're listening. And I appreciate you guys for coming out and showing the support. Whether you're listening to the episodes or you're just here just to be here, I appreciate you guys for showing up. It's support and it's friendship and it's the connection that really helps all of us, different stages of side hustle, solopreneurship, entrepreneurship, business, moguls, everything. Connections is what's going to drive it and push people forward. So appreciate you guys and everybody listening. Thank you for checking in for the first 99. I hope you enjoyed this 100th episode, and I can't wait for the upcoming episodes too. So thank you guys all, and we'll catch you next week.
Woo! Peace.